And then we're just going to fill for a minute to make sure that we don't cut off the beginning of the show because that happens and it makes me an angry Chewy.
All right, so let's fill for about a minute. So, yeah, hey Dirk, how you doing?
Doing good. Hopefully you guys
All
are
right.
too.
Why do you randomly know how tall Mecha Godzilla is?
I was reading a thing, like a scale thing
Wrestling
of mechas.
for wrestling, right?
That's right.
Yeah, this is work related, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We've been talking so long I had to pop a freaking Ricola so I don't lose my voice before we're done. Or before we start. Also, let me not lose all my notes. Oh, here's my notes. Okay. All right. How long is that? That is 1 minute exactly. That should be enough. Okay. Everybody ready for very depressing. I will issue verbal content warnings when we're going to get to the sensitive material, but be warned. We'll be talking about. There will be mentions of suicide and uh, child abuse. And while no actual child abuse happened, we have to talk about it a lot because there was a lot of fear about that sort of thing. So if that's not your bag, completely understand. If that causes you problems, completely understand. Warning you now, please leave. I'll do another one for the actual podcast, so you can hang out until then if you want. That's fine too. I'm looking out for you. So okay, move the Ricola over here. Okay, here we go. Oh, jam! Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mana Pool. This is hey, I had a sandwich called a ham and jam.
Did.
It was delicious. A ham and what? Jam. Anyway, uh, this is after all this time, episode 666 of the Mana Pool because we have been going for over 15 years now. Buh. And
We
for
would have
episode
reached
six,
this.
do what?
I was gonna say we would have reached this even sooner had COVID not slowed us down a bit.
It's true.
Because for a while there, we were taking several weeks off, and when we were getting together, we were not really calling it an episode. So,
It's true. So, a lot of people were asking randomly, "Are you guys doing anything special for episode 666?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. That's like, you know, 20 episodes away." And then it was, "I don't know, man. That's like 10 episodes away." And then it was, "I don't know, man. That's in 2 episodes. We should probably think about this." So, yeah, we did. And we've decided to do something I want to say special because this is not a Magic episode, although Magic will be mentioned. This is not a Magic the Gathering episode. This is a very serious episode. We're going to talk about things that are very dark and depressing and infuriating. So we're talking history. How's the saying go? If
real
you're
world.
enjoying reading
Yeah.
about history, then you're not reading about real history.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. But before we get into all that, I am Chewy, the lead dork, here to keep the evil at bay, I guess. And I'm joined by the other, as chat just pointed out, the other three dorks of the apocalypse. So
That's about
introduce
right.
yourselves, dorks.
Hey, I'm Brian. I'm the lead rambler, tangent master of the group. And yeah, this one's going to be a little different. So I'm not sure which dork of the apocalypse I am. I'm definitely loquaciousness. Ha 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 ha.
I'm Mike. I'm the rules guy and the game lore guy, and right now I'm the writer on the gray couch.
And I'm Dirk, the self-proclaimed greenest man alive and moral compass of the group.
Thank
And
goodness.
I would be the, I guess, uh, moralist on the gray horse. I don't know. I can't think of a horse that I would particularly be riding and what it would be called.
He's
On a
Besides the Bible.
on a
indecisiveness.
steel horse, I ride. That's a lie. I don't ride any kind of horse. And for a life. Oh Lord. So we are going to be talking about the what's known as the Satanic Panic from the late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, 90s. It honestly never ended, but it was at its peak in like late 70s, mid 80s, that sort of span. And we'll go into some of the what caused it, what it was all about, and what other moral outrages have come since then. And yeah, it's going to be a little rough cuz it's rough subject matter, but it's us, so you'll be fine. I will issue content warnings when necessary, just so you know. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have, I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier. I'm going to put a little thing on the screen for the people that are watching on YouTube so they'll know when they can stop scrubbing through to rejoin us.
There you go.
Yeah, how about that? Once I figure out how to do that. So, Brian was going to tell us about demons, weirdly enough.
Yeah. So, hmm. So, and I guess first content warning right here. It is impossible. I tried. I was doing research. I tried to stay away from religion, but
When
you
talking about demons,
can't.
really now.
Yeah, but you can't. So it seems the word demon actually has fairly ancient roots, goes back to Greek and beyond. But from the Greek in the Romanized version, it's used before it ever became associated with a negative force. It was used to denote divinity, which is kind of fascinating. But you think of divinity not so much from the modern perspective as it would have been more again in the time of the ancient Greeks, where divinity is not necessarily seen as, you know, all good, all loving. Zeus was, what can I say on this show? We're PG-13. Zeus had
Zeus was a
character
dick.
flaws. Yeah, there you go. There you
All
go.
right.
So,
All right. Please
but
ignore this
it
content
also
warning. It's just on the screen because I haven't found it to take it off yet. Okay, there it is.
so but the word demon actually also is used with it came up a lot when I was researching the etymology with genius. And as Mike and I were discussing prior to the show, and I think he hit this on this head, I kind of saw that and I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. I was applying more of a modern take on that. And Mike, how did you say you had heard it used before, in your own words, as it might
Oh,
relate to this?
to represent intellectual inspiration, a
Right.
force. It's sometimes represented by, sometimes thought of as a spirit or some kind of supernatural
So instead of
influence.
saying he's a genius, it's the concept of that is genius.
Yeah,
Right. Like a muse, perhaps, a supernatural source of inspiration. And when you dig down into it, it definitely starts to take on, especially in the more modern context as we see it, a darker a, a darker connotation. And as I'm sure Chewy will get into, the there are certain sects of, especially Christianity, but other religions as well, that view the supernatural less as godly or divine and more as witchcraft and wizardry, and not in a Hogwarts sense, but in the like, Salem, like burn the witch type. So, oh, it's not of this mortal earth, therefore it's from the other place, and not the good place, but the bad place. Um, I tried in my research to distinguish demons from fallen angels, and some sources treat them differently. Some say they are interchangeable, and that the very first demons were the angels that were cast out of heaven. And it keeps mentioning, obviously, the big one everybody knows is Lucifer, but also Leviathan, and there's another one. And where did I put my notes? There were like the big three. It was Lucifer, Leviathan, and I had it written down. I can't find it, but it's
Beelzebub,
interesting.
maybe?
Some of the It might have been Beelzebub. A lot of the texts treat Lucifer and Satan as two different entities. So that's interesting how in the modern take we have like combined them. Thank you, Milton and Paradise Lost and that sort of thing. But it's like when you read a book and then you watch the movie and the movie has combined two characters into one character. There you go.
Yeah.
So, but
It should
allegedly,
also be pointed out that in the Bible there was no like devil.
right.
Yeah, you really have to have it pointed out to you to find
Yeah.
the original
Yeah.
sources that are the basis for a lot
Yeah.
of that.
Genesis mentions the serpent, but it's only ever a serpent, and if anything, it's not only implied, but it's directly stated to be a mortal creature because it says, "Hey, there was the serpent. He did this bad thing, and as punishment, now he slithers on the ground." So it's very
Yeah. There are connections in those texts, but there's a lot of stuff that just comes from folk traditions that isn't
right.
documented like that.
Nowadays we
It's
call it fanfic.
in in
Oh,
it's fascinating.
I should point out I'm going to say some really flippant things this episode, being the only atheist out of the four of us. And I do not mean to demean anyone's religion at all. I will demean specific practitioners of specific religions later when we get into the actual panic. But I don't take it personally. I don't mean anything bad about you or your beliefs, whatever they may or may not be. But
I mean, we've known Chewie for 20 years, and we still allow this heathen around us, right?
it's
So,
true. I don't know why. I
yeah.
keep trying to make them go away, and they won't.
He
But
has
Because
been.
we need a fourth
He is.
for commander.
Oh, that's true. Um, he has
yeah,
been
like
to
in
my
the book of
churches.
Job, uh, I think he was called Satan, was just another angel who was like, "Hey, I bet he's only good because his life. He's only like faithful because his life is good. You should take that away and see if he curses you." And he makes a bet with God, essentially. Like that's the book of Job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Oh,
just specifically a spirit that would go around, accusing people and looking for ways to get people into trouble, but not like
le-
big
less
people.
less Lucifer, like Satan, more Loki. Like, hey, they've got it pretty nice. Let's
Mhm.
mess with them a little bit.
Yeah, but
So
I
the
think
book,
the term Satan was used for that because as Chat just pointed out, Satan is Hebrew for accuser or adversary, and like
Yeah.
I think it's Has Satan, which means the adversary in I forget which language that is. Yeah,
um,
and then in the New
the
Testament we got the one who took Jesus up on the mountain and tempted him, but he
right.
wasn't like the ruler of hell. He was just a temptation type of thing.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever named in that
I
in
think
that
it's
book.
the devil. I think.
It might, and there might be some discussion between King James and the older versions.
Wait, wasn't
So
he named Satan there too because of the whole get thee behind me"? Was that from the Bible or was that from some later stuff?
No, "Get behind me, Satan" was a response to Peter when Peter was basically like showing some weakness.
Oh, right. Okay, right.
but the book of Job, since you mentioned it, is actually also the source of the words Leviathan and Behemoth for
Mm,
those that like Final Fantasy.
yeah,
So,
Oh
but both
yeah.
of those are named. Both of
and
those are named.
there's also other sources that have a beast of the air, a giant bird called Z's, but Z's
Yep.
doesn't show up in the Book of Job.
So,
Z's was busy that day.
but
Mhm.
so I guess getting back to the root of it, in Christian theology, which again is not one unified thing, but in a lot of it, Satan is seen as, Satan or Lucifer is seen as not only an angel in most respects, but an archangel that rebelled, like Han Solo, against God and was cast into hell for punishment. And while in hell, essentially, the other angels that followed his lead were bound to him and became demons. And according to some sources, they can go to Earth, and according to others, they can't. But they get blamed for a lot of the evils of the world. And oh, it's Lucifer's job to trick the otherwise righteous human beings into doing bad things. And then when they commit sins and they die, their souls therefore are also bound to hell.
I should also point out
Where
none of that's in the Bible.
none of it's in the Bible.
That all
You are
comes
correct.
way later, like the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Yeah, a
And
combination of folk traditions and Middle Ages thought, and later on, Milton. Lots and lots of
Lots of
Milton.
Milton.
lots of Milton, which Paradise Lost is a political book. It was politics. If you read the names of the people that
Oh,
Paradise Lost, for those
and
that
Dante Alighieri. Yeah.
Yeah. The background we have
Paradise,
here is a famous woodcut that's a scene from
yeah,
uh, Inferno. Like
yeah,
that's
which
Lucifer there. Hey, buddy.
which Inferno gets all the press. There's other sections that deal with purgatory and paradise, but hey, we want to know about the nasty stuff.
Yeah, those
But
are way less. What's the word?
publicized,
Interesting.
Juicy.
aw,
Way less
yeah,
flashy.
Yeah.
yeah.
I have
Uh,
read them. They're way less flashy.
but in this, for those of you that haven't read the book or played the video game, which not saying anything about that, um,
It's an
a
old school
more
God of War style game. Literally, it's
basically,
called
yeah,
Dante's Inferno.
um, a human soul is shown with a guide through the layers of hell. And first of all, Milton is
What?
it take
Dante.
wait no
Dante,
no Dante. Milton wrote Paradise Lost.
correct.
Dante, uh, you know, did his research, but he, unless we know differently, he didn't really go to hell. So he's not making it up, but clearly he's telling a story here. And the people that he's meeting in hell are politicians that Dante himself was familiar with and didn't like for various reasons. So the whole point with that is, I would tell you to take it with a grain of salt, but no, really, really, like the whole container. So it's also fascinating to me there, and this is I'm going to try not to interject my own opinion in a whole lot of things because religion is ultimately a very personal thing. I have my beliefs, other people have theirs. To me, this is one of the only things I'll say. There's this very interesting contrast. Half the stuff has Lucifer as like he's the Lord and tyrant of hell and he's all powerful. He's almost at a level of God, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because everything else says he's a prisoner. He's stuck. And so it's this which is it? And some sources kind of make him a little bit of both. Like in Paradise Lost, there's a quote by Lucifer that says it's better to rule in hell than to be a servant in heaven. Like he doesn't really regret being thrown down because, he's boss man now, I guess. So, but just some contrast there, but kind of leading into the rest of the discussion where I think Chewie's going to pick up a lot of the workload from me. Just kind of setting the stage. Lucifer or Satan, both the same person, whoever, are supposedly in hell in and subtly influencing humans on Earth to do bad things so that he can claim their soul. So, you know, how does that how does that make its way into our thoughts, patterns, behavior? For a lot of people, it doesn't, but every now and then something going on in history in the world kicks up and Satan or various other ne'er-do-well forces are brought to the forefront again, either generally as a scapegoat. So on that note, Dewey.
What I do. It is also a known fact that later in the modern times, Lucifer left hell and opened a nightclub in L.A.
Well, that's true. In DC Comics, yeah.
Yeah, and in the
And
TV
on a
show. Yeah,
yeah, this is a pretty good show. Yeah, I liked it.
yeah.
He had a little bit of a cameo in Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was nice.
I heard about that. It
Oh,
made me
and just
happy.
oh, and because I spent a lot of this talking about the devil, but a demon, I would say, while I started out talking about this, demons are also generally thought of as far as I can tell, in the more modern context, so to speak, is more devil minions, um, and spirits of spirits of air and darkness to contrast with spirits of earth, which are seen as more actually wholesome, I guess. So, but anyway, because we were talking about demons, I got stuck on Lucifer.
I mean, he
But
is said devil, so.
he is. It's and yeah,
All
I might
right.
have additional comments here and there, but that's the background.
So, getting into the Satanic Panic itself. So the Satanic Panic is just the name we've given to one of the many moral panics throughout history. Like, there were ones before Satan that actually Brian brought up in the pre-show as something that set the stage for all of this that I and all of the videos that I watched about the Satanic Panic did not bring up at all. And that's McCarthyism.
Yeah,
Like,
sticking it to the commies, who, by the way, were red like the background.
wow.
Coincidence.
But
That's
like,
what he'd have you believe.
but yeah, so Joseph McCarthy was a senator in the U.S. and back in like the 40s and 50s. I mean, it's called McCarthyism because he, like the Red Scare, like he was one of the people who was manipulating the fear of the average American.
There
Yep.
was a concern that communism had infiltrated the United States and that the people who believed in it could be your everyday neighbor, the people you see around. You during that time you had spies in the U.S. had infiltrated and gotten the plans for the atomic bomb and had given it to the Soviet Union, and part of that was through espionage, and part of that was that could happen to everyday Americans. You could have these people infiltrating in the public, and you don't know who that is, so you better be watching out for your neighbor.
Yeah, which that is a key element to what we're going to be discussing going forward. Of this thought of it could be anyone around you, and also this thought of, almost being nudged in the ribs and being said, it's not you, it's not you, it might be that other person, but that thought of like, we're talking to you because you're okay, this other person might not be okay.
Yeah. And thank you for that 6-month resub, Mycroft. But like McCarthy whipped up the general public the fear of the other, which is literally a tale as old as time. But the fear of the other, and caused all kinds of just general problems in the United States with people turning on their neighbors. Are you a communist? And like we've all heard probably of the House Un-American Activities Committee, which brought anybody. Essentially, the House Un-American Activities Committee was there to threaten political adversaries of McCarthy and his crew. Like, there's really no other way to do it, or way to say it.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't actually do anything useful, I don't think. But any sort of, like, commie pinko movie director who made movies that weren't the same westerns we've all seen a billion times, I bet they're a communist. Like, it was just nonsense. It was all paranoia and political nonsense.
Yeah.
It was a chance for them to pick out people that, like they're saying, were people who were a little bit of outsiders or people who strayed, and you ended up with, was it the Scarlet Letter, or who was the person who ended up writing about the Salem witch trials? During that period, like he was specifically called out by McCarthy and ended up writing a book about the witch trials.
Talking about Arthur Miller and the Crucible?
That's it, Arthur Miller.
Oh, I didn't actually read the Crucible.
He was an example of one of the people who got called out and ended up writing a book about it.
Yeah.
Well,
like there were a lot. Anybody, like I said, that McCarthy and his crew didn't like got attacked. Like Lucille Ball, for God's sake, was called in front of the HUAC, or was blacklisted, or whatever. Like, there's a list here on the website, or on Wikipedia, and hers was the first name I saw that made me go, really? Really?
Think about it, like, what they got to do was they got to say, okay, what's something that people don't like? Communism, because they're on the other side of this Cold War we're doing. So, okay, we make people afraid by saying they're all around you, and then what do? They cherry pick certain activities, certain behaviors that they didn't like or they didn't want to encourage, and they linked them inextricably in the public's mind to communism. It's like saying,
it's a thing that's still being done today, but like literally still being done today, because one of the big things was, I bet homosexuals are all communists because that's not red-blooded American values. Does that sound familiar? Because it should. It's happening today again. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. But we're getting a little too into McCarthyism. I'm just pointing out, this was a thing that had just happened within the lifetimes of these people.
Oh, sure. And
being suspicious of your neighbors was a thing they grew up with.
And I don't want to spend the whole time on McCarthyism either, but I just want to point out that to this day, it's not even that, like, we're completely past this, because to this day, what do you hear certain people say? Oh, I don't like so-and-so. Why? Because they're a communist. It's like we haven't even moved past that point for some people yet. So, still relevant today. Even if we're not doing hearings...
Yep.
Still relevant today.
And the other thing that Brian brought up, or the other aspect of this that Brian brought up, was that one of the ways that McCarthy and his ilk tried to separate us from them was that we have God on our side and they're godless communists.
Yep.
Which will be important, in just a minute.
Yeah.
So, moral outrages are always a political tool to distract the masses from things that actually matter and to whip them up into a frenzy so you can get votes out of them. And to target political opponents. That's all moral outrages are. That's what Fox News does on a daily basis. None of this has changed. Clearly, we have not evolved as a species since the freaking 50s.
Oh, sure.
So, that was, like I said, so that was the 40s and the 50s. That was the thing that was in the minds. The people later in the 70s and 80s grew up with, the Red Scare being a thing. Other things that led to the Satanic Panic, the religious right rose up as a thing. Fundamentalism became a big thing in the U.S., and when politicians realized, oh, we could use that, then it became an even bigger thing. Because, again, you can whip up people into a frenzy about anything and then use that to influence politics and economic trends and get votes, like they do today. Other things that happened, The Exorcist came out, the book and then the movie, which was, it's hard for us to believe these days, but it was a giant cultural thing, and this horror movie that was actually good. So that, now I'm not saying that The Exorcist is what caused the Satanic Panic, but The Exorcist as a cultural thing put the idea of demons possessing our children in the minds of people. And around the same time, Charles Manson and the Manson family murders, and then Jonestown put the idea, the fear of cults, into people's heads. So this all, sort of came together and from varying different things that had happened in the public's eye. And then the book Michelle Remembers came out. And it was... okay. Let me make sure I don't screw this up. I didn't actually take any notes about what Michelle Remembers was about, so I don't want to screw this up. Let's go to Wikipedia. So, Michelle Remembers is a book written by a Canadian psychiatrist about his patient who he eventually married. So, but it's a recovered memory therapy book where his patient and eventual wife, Michelle, used recovered memory therapy to make claims about satanic ritual abuse. And for some reason, this hit at just the right time to become a sensation. This guy, what's his name? Lawrence Pasder. Was such a big deal. He became a celebrity, quote unquote, expert in these satanic cult trials later on. So he got on this pony and he wrote it. It's all been debunked.
The authority.
Yeah. It's all been debunked and discredited in the meantime. But,
well, that's
seminars.
the thing.
Oh, keep going. Or go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick. That's the thing. You reach enough people, and we're talking about even before the internet, which made this much easier. You get enough people to think you're an expert on something. You say something that they somehow wanted you to say. You maybe didn't even know it, but it just yes, I get it. I identify with this guy. Won't someone think of the children sort of thing? And then they can be discredited 50 ways from Sunday and it sticks with people. How many people still think that vaccines will cause your kids to, be on the spectrum? Way too many. Why? Because a quote unquote scientist in, I believe, uh, Britain, I think, wrote a report and said, yeah, the vaccines are going to do this to your kids, and has been proven wrong so many times. But he reached enough people in the
Yeah.
meantime that,
Oh,
yeah,
that's not
He
even what happened
recruited
with that.
he recruited kids from families that were already anti-vaccine and falsified data about every single one of them.
Wow.
Every single one.
This must be later, because the original anti-vax thing, like the
Talking about
guy,
Andrew Wakefield.
I think that's his name, yeah. Like
yeah,
his original thing was that he wasn't anti-vax, he was anti the combined vaccine because he wanted to market his own individual vaccine. So he tried to discredit the combined one. That's where all this started. He was not an anti-vaxxer. He was trying to make money by discrediting a different vaccine. And now he's an anti-vaxxer because that's how he makes his living, because he picked up on it and ran with it. So you don't even have to do the things that people think you did.
yeah.
Although later he did go on to do all of that and worse because, terrible person. But H Bomber Guy has a brilliant video about that, by the way. I highly recommend it on YouTube. I recommend all of H Bomb's videos. It's good stuff. Anyway. So let's see here. Seminars about satanic cults became like a cottage industry, playing off of the fear because people realized, oh, we could make money off of this if we fan this flame a little bit. And so, like, law enforcement had seminars about how to deal with satanic cults, and there were churches, and it was like I said, it was a cottage industry where you could, I'll teach you how to deal with satanic cults by just making crap up and reading this Michelle Remembers book. It's ridiculous, but that's how it started to spread, and made it seem like it was a real concern because there were seminars about it, warning you about it all over the place. So it must be an actual problem, right?
I mean, they wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. Now, in 1979, Dungeons and Dragons got pulled into all of this nonsense because, okay, there was a 16-year-old kid in college. Okay?
Okay.
Keep 16
Yes.
in college. And he just disappeared from his dorm room one day. And a PI was hired to find him, and he was looking around his room and he found out that he played D&D, and so he somehow magically decided that D&D was the reason that he disappeared. I'm gonna issue the first content warning here for suicide. Not yet, but in a minute. So if you would like to skip that, if you're watching the video, scrub forward until the content warning disappears. Okay? Okay. But yeah, okay, so this PI decided that D&D was this kid played D&D, and that led him, he got too far into his game, and he's living under the steam tunnels at the university.
Yep.
What?
Mind you, yep, as in I've heard this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mind you, there was literally zero evidence for this. This PI just saw some stuff he didn't understand and decided it was the cause. So, yeah. Now, it turns out what actually happened was that this kid had some serious mental health problems, and what he did was he ran away. Like, the pressure got too much, and he ran away. And he was found, I think it was a month later. And eventually, unfortunately, he did commit suicide. But it was not because of D&D. Like, it was because of his mental health problems and his, like, the pressure of being so young and in college got to him.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a way to deal with it, or, like, this was in the 70s, so it's not like going to therapy was remotely normalized.
Right.
And it still isn't as much as it should be. So,
But let's not blame the real world problems, because that means we'd have something to address.
yeah.
Like,
Okay, I'm going to turn the content warning off again. Hello, welcome back. So, this PI wrote a book called The Dungeon Master in 1984. Now, the story of this kid disappearing made all the news. It was a thing that spread like wildfire again. And then he wrote the book in 1984. Now, in 1982, a movie starring our very own Tom Hanks in his first starring role called Mazes and Monsters came out. That was a distorted... No, the movie was based on a book. So the movie came out in 82. The book came out before that. But it was based on a distorted memory of this kid's disappearance before he was eventually found. And in Mazes and Monsters, it's a kid who plays D&D who has serious like trauma, and he falls into his character. This is Tom Hanks' character. He falls into his D&D character and thinks that's real life. And that contributed to just the zeitgeist of people thinking that this is a thing that can happen. Like, they remembered,
right.
I think his last name was Egbert. They remember Egbert, I think that's right, disappearing. And they remember D&D being blamed. And then this movie came out. And then the book, The Dungeon Master, about Egbert came out. And it all just became a thing. And then the media and the religious nuts got a hold of the idea that D&D was teaching demonology to your children. Which there were interviews done at the time with Gary Gygax and the other guy whose name I can never remember.
Dave Arneson.
Do what?
Dave Arneson.
Is that right? Okay.
I thought it was.
I would believe Mike. Yes. So.
Yeah.
I just remember that name, Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. That's what I remember.
That's probably it then. And they went back and forth between thinking it was like hilariously stupid, because it was, to being just absolutely gobsmacked that this connection got drawn at all. They're like, we don't... What? How? No? What? Are you serious? Really? Am I on candid camera? Like... And then... Okay, hang on. My notes come from several different sources here, so I'm kind of jumping around. So then, because of various other things, like... okay, here's another content warning for child abuse. Despite that not actually happening. In 1983, the McMartin preschool case, one parent said that their kid was being sexually abused at this daycare, and somehow I didn't write it down how that it blossomed into this, but it turned into a giant mess about a massive satanic cult in the daycare, and like the owner and everyone that worked there was all in on it. And when I say massive, I'm talking like, the further along this went, the more outlandish things got. Like, they would regularly boil babies and eat them. And they would kill animals in front of the children and force them to drink the blood. And at one point, it was claimed that, I think this was the same case, daycare satanic cult things became a thing that happened all over the country after the McMartin case. So it could be this case or it could be a different one. My notes don't specify. But they were accused of flying the children to Mexico to be sexually abused by the Mexican army or something, and then flown back in a day. What? So, so this, like I said, this all started with one parent who had problems. But it got worse because the investigators who were questioning all of these children were doing so in ways that are nowadays realized to be leading and not able to be admissible in court. Like, hey, did such and such touch you here? No. You know, you can tell me, right? No. But did it happen? No. But maybe it happened. No. So if you were really brave and you wanted to tell me that this happened, that would be really good. So did it happen? Maybe? All right, you're so brave. Here's a cookie. Like, you can't do that.
No, you're really not supposed to. I don't feel like I need to be a lawyer to say no.
Exactly.
You're really not supposed to. We already have issues with confirmation bias just in general. Just in general. Confirmation bias is when someone, well, cop or otherwise, who is so convinced of what they already think is the truth that when they pose questions, even when they hear answers by the other person, their mind is already framing it in such a way that it comports with the knowledge they already have. Guess what? Everybody does it. Everybody does it because we have years and years of world life experience that teaches us the sky is blue. The ground is wet after it rains. And when we hear evidence that, oh, wait, this patch of land wasn't wet, that's not right. It must not have rained. So, something like that. But it's especially bad when it comes to investigators because then people hear what their results are and they're like, hey, so and so said that they touched me there. Or so and so said that they attended a meeting and everybody drank goat's blood, that sort of thing. And people take that as truth, regardless of the fact that it was obtained dubiously.
Exactly. And like this preschool case went on for a very long time, and at the time was one of the longest and costliest trials in American history. So like, oh, chat says 7 years, and she would know. So, yeah, and this, like I said, daycares suddenly all across the country were being accused of being a satanic cult and eating children, and like thousands of children have gone missing, even though there were no records of thousands of children going missing and being eaten by cults. But it's the same amount of evidence we have that that trans people are gonna assault women in bathrooms. Like it's literally the same amount of evidence. Zero. In 93, I didn't realize it was that late. Something known as the West Memphis Three. 3 teenagers were jailed for the murder of 3 children, despite there being zero physical evidence. Now, they were jailed from 1996 to 2011. That's what? 15 years? That's 15 years. Because they were into metal music and the occult. There was no evidence to link them to the scene, but they liked metal music and were into the occult, so clearly they're satanic murderers. The only reason they were released is because DNA evidence that was discovered, later, because, again, DNA evidence is a relatively new thing. They were exonerated, but apparently not really. Like, they were allowed to leave prison, but from what I understand, the deal that they signed to get them out, they're still guilty on paper. So they're still convicted felons. But they're free now, I guess. Again,
Interesting
zero evidence. because once the religious right gets a hold of something and they can say, oh, this threatens traditional family values, sound familiar? Then it can blow up, and because won't someone think of the children? Like, there are a lot more. Pat Pulling. Okay. Pat Pulling's son committed suicide. And rather than deal with that in a healthy way, she decided to sue the principal of her son's school for cursing him with D&D, because there was I don't know if it was an after-school program or something, but there was some sort of program at school where they did things, and D&D was one of those things. And she actually became a massive crusader against Dungeons and Dragons. After she tried to sue the principal, that didn't work. It was thrown out. She tried to sue TSR, the creators. That didn't work. She tried to sue the publishers. I don't know who they were at the time. That didn't work. So she formed BAD, which you might have heard. You've heard of MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving?
Mm-hmm.
This is BAD, which I am dead serious stands for Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons.
Wow.
Which
I
is
had never heard of this.
Just the stupidest name. But it was a massive, like, next door or mum's net, if you're British, like, type of thing in the US that was formed of, like, suburban moms who were afraid Satan was coming for their children through a tabletop board game that caused all kinds of trouble throughout the country for years. And then the media, again, got a hold of it. Freaking Geraldo Rivera ran a whole special about satanic cults and children and drew a line on this episode about a distinct connection between satanic cults and children and Dungeons and Dragons. On a news show. A primetime news show. Now, he has since, like, years later, he retracted this and apologized for all the damage he'd caused and all of the innocents that had been hurt because of it. But by then it was too late. You know, good on him for that. But, like, the teen suicides and murders became things that BAD and people that hated Dungeons and Dragons and thought that it was evil could point at and say, see? And that just became the thing. That was the proof, in quotes. Now, okay, yeah. I don't mean to get stereotypical here, but think of the people. So Dungeons and Dragons is relatively mainstream now, right?
Right.
Like, my mom is even brought up, you don't play Dungeons and Dragons, do you? I'm like, no. She's like, oh. Like, why? She's like, oh, I just didn't know. It's like, where? What? Because they watch Stranger Things. The whole Satanic Panic and D&D thing was a major plot point in the most recent episode of Stranger Things, which is why there's so much talk about it, which is why I had so many videos to watch about it for research. So, thank you, Duffer Brothers.
most recent season.
Yeah. Is that not what I said?
You said episode, but keep going.
Oh, my bad.
No,
the most recent series, if you want to be British about it. But hang on, I lost my train of thought. Where was I before I brought up Stranger Things?
Dungeons and Dragons has gained is more socially acceptable.
Oh, right. It's more socially acceptable now. Like, everybody plays D&D except for me, it seems. But in the 70s and 80s, Dungeons and Dragons was not a mainstream thing. Again, I don't want to draw like stereotypes here, but it was a nerd thing that literally only nerds did. And nerds,
yeah, I mean,
nerds in the 70s and 80s weren't like nerds freaking rule the world now. But back then, nerds were the outcasts. Nerds were the weird kids. The ones who didn't do mainstream things. And speaking as someone who was born in 1980 and grew up a nerd, like, we got picked on a lot for just being into the things we're into, like,
Mhm.
and so the kids who were outsiders back then are gonna be more likely to have mental health problems and things like suicidal ideation just because of the way things were back then. So the fact that at least the prevailing thought was that kids who played D&D had a higher suicide rate sort of makes a weird kind of sense until they did a study and found out that people who play D&D had a lower average suicide rate than the kids who didn't. You want to know why? Probably because D&D was what they did with their friends,
Yeah.
which was a healthy activity for their brains. Huh.
They were less isolated socially
Yeah,
when they were playing.
exactly. So that whole thing that I just set up, it wasn't even true, but it sounded reasonable, didn't it? And that was the thought back then. So yeah, that was there were a lot of these things where a tragedy happened and a scapegoat was needed, whether it was from the parents who didn't want to think about the truth, or the media who, once the media glommed on to something, hey, we can talk about D&D being evil and that's easy ratings, they did. That's why Geraldo did that whole special.
Yeah.
So like,
I want to be.
they're to blame there as well, but like, so many of these things just all happened around the same time, and the fingers all got pointed at a card game, a tabletop game that brings kids together. But at the time, like, I guess we didn't
I want to be.
have like the gay people were still had still around that time being forced into the closet, so they weren't a big enough section of society to be pointed at as the boogeyman, so they had to make something else up. Like, it's all just sad.
It is, and I want to be clear. I don't blame the families of the victims because they are dealing with tragedy. They, especially if we're talking about someone taking their own life, I'm sure they probably didn't see it coming, or didn't want to feel like they saw it coming. So somebody then goes to them and says, "Hey, your child did this because X or Y." Even if part of them should know, that's not right. They're not going to be in the state of mind where they can really parse that information.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. And I know you were doing that as well, but I just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
specifically that these people were being taken advantage of.
Like, except in the case of Pat Pulling, who latched onto this idea of D&D and a curse being what caused her son to take his own life,
Right.
and then just ran with it for years and years.
Yeah.
And years. Like,
Yeah, that's going beyond the moment of, oh wow, I can't believe this.
exactly. Yeah. And again, it could be that the parents, other than Pat Pulling, had nothing to do with this, and it's just, another kid died. D&D, Satan coming for him. Oh my god. So, yeah, I'm gonna take off the content warning now because it's been on this whole time. But so let's not
Right.
bring up any more of that if we can help it. But let me take this off so people can rejoin us if they're scrubbing through. So, hi, welcome back. So that's like all of the things that came together to cause the Satanic Panic to happen. Now I asked, should I go into our listener submissions now? You think,
Sure.
or do we want to commentate some first?
I mean, if it's up to you, if you want to go into it, we can.
Well, I'll tell you what. So I asked listeners in various places, hey, do you have any Satanic Panic stories? You know, either you or someone you know. And yeah, we got several. So let me run through these real quick. Yeah, view post. Here we go. So let's see here. Uriah, who later went on to have a magic YouTube channel. Remember CMDR Dex? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Said, my brother and I started playing Magic with the release of Ice Age. A few years later, my mom threw all of our cards away because of, quote, satanic influence. The burning pentagram on the unholy strengths didn't help. He said it sucked, but at least we didn't have any money cards. It was mostly commons and uncommons, so I didn't lose a Lotus. I was like, okay, good. Our mossy friend Brian Prilliman said, in college, I was helping come up with rules for a video game and was studying the D&D 2nd edition rule set. He was home over the summer, and the lady that cleaned the house found my player's handbook and told my mom that I wasn't just into Dungeons and Dragons, but it was advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I was like, oh no, you've been into evil so long you've graduated past the entry level stuff. Nick, who was I don't actually know, a judge, said, I had no restrictions personally, but had a very religious friend who was only allowed to play church-made NES games. Like Sunday Fun Day and the Bible Adventures and Noah's Ark, that sort of stuff. Which, those games are universally bad, so that's rough. Oh, wait a minute. The others were on the Maniple post. Okay, here we go. All right, these get a little darker. Joey says, growing up in the 80s and early 90s, at the height of the Satanic Panic, my parents didn't limit anything I did, but I had friends whose parents stayed worried about it. I think the wildest claim I ever heard was that the song Rome by the B-52s was a satanic anthem. No, nothing? Okay.
I wonder if that's also connected to the Job story, with how he answers what he's been doing.
Oh.
Around the world.
Mm.
Adam says his high school banned MTG for a few weeks because the assistant principal, who just so happened to be a huge bigot, decided it wasn't appropriate for children. And then in a staggering display of solidarity, which I don't know if we'd get these days, he says, in protest, a large amount of the student body walked around with magic cards safety pinned to our clothes and backpacks until the administration reversed the ban and we got our MTG club back. This would have been around 97 or 98.
For them.
Yeah, that makes me... Well, I would say the kids are all right, but now they're our age, so maybe not.
So what kind of nerd school did you go to?
Yeah, right? That sounds awesome. Chris says, I went to a Christian school for part of my 7th grade in 1981. I was a full-time D&D freak. One day, the good reverend called my parents to ask if he could use his version of corporal punishment to drive the devil out of me and make me stop playing D&D. He said, luckily for me, that was my last day at the academy, and his parents denied the good reverend's request.
Good. Not everybody would have.
Yeah. A different Chris said, I had a friend's mom yell at him for playing MTG with me at lunch in the 3rd grade. Also, many friends weren't allowed to come over after they found out we were playing D&D. We were known as the House of Satan. So y'all had the cool house.
Mom, I want to go over to a friend's house after school. Which house? The house of Satan. Ask your father.
All right, these last two are a trip. I guess technically three. So this comes from Cassandra. She says, I was raised Mormon. So church for the youth was always going on about the music of the day, 80s new wave and heavy metal in particular. Songs like Depeche Mode's Strange Love was not about love, but Satan tempting blah, 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 blah. That's what she wrote. I'm not editorializing.
Right.
In high school, there were the nerds and the nerds that played D&D. There were two separate groups. The nerds that played D&D were the Satanists. One thing I remember the most, let's see, Mormon teens are sent to seminary. One period out of the school day where we go to study scriptures, they would have these things they called firesides, kind of extracurricular seminary. Usually you go listen to some church leader, tell us not to have sex and what have you, blah, blah, blah. This is the 80s. And for one of those, some Looney Tune, her word, decided a record/tape burning would be a swell idea. They actually built a massive bonfire in some church parking lot and had the kids bring their records and tapes of satanic music to burn. She then goes, I can't imagine how toxic the fumes were. She said, fortunately, I was able to miss this particular fireside, which was a literal fireside in this case. But they made a video of it to show in seminary class. Kids jumping around so excited to be burning stuff, getting testimony of kids saying how much closer they felt to God since tossing in their Def Leppard, Ozzy, Wham. Absurd, all of it. Shortly after this, I decided to wear a Dead Kennedy shirt to class. It was the cover of the In God We Trust Inc. album. So I got kicked out of seminary and was asked not to come back. She says, side note, I'm an atheist now. I can understand that. Actually, another friend of mine told me over the phone that he was wearing, oh God, I forgot what the shirt was. A Pantera shirt, I think he said. Inside out, because he was in church and they frowned on that sort of thing. And what did he say happened? They tried to do a random, on the spot exorcism because he was wearing a Pantera shirt to drive the evil from him. I think that's what he said. This was over the phone. I don't have it written down, so my memory of it is not going to be as clear. But yeah, he is also an atheist now. And then my favorite comes from our old buddy, Jack LaCroix.
Oh, wow.
Oh, hey.
Well, actually, it's two. But he said in his own personal experience, we had a Southern Baptist preacher that spent 2 sermons talking about how Pokemon was a byproduct of the devil and how it was going to corrupt the youth. And said, the game is now over 20 years old and that priest is in prison for touching kids. So, But this was a story that blew my mind. So, this was before my time on Monday Night Magic, but apparently, Monday Night Magic did a contest to give away a copy of the Dual Decks Divine versus Demonic when it came out. Mm-hmm. And now, this is also before Jack's time, but he was listening back then. So this is coming third hand from whatever happened to Jack's memory to me. So if some details are wrong for anyone that remembers, just, don't worry about it. That's what happens with time. But he said the winner was a former Catholic priest who had started playing MTG during Alpha and Beta as a means to pass the time. When the head of his, whatever the male version of a convent is, Mike?
I guess it depends on what you're talking about. It's
just give me some words.
I don't know. It might be the whole order. It might just be the monastery.
Okay. Well, whatever. So when the head of that found out that he had two decks of cards called Divine versus Demonic, he said they literally held a bonfire in front of him and burned his cards. and they accused him of allowing the devil into the church. The guy quit the church that same day because he realized it was full of hypocrisy. So Monday Night Magic had a hand in this guy leaving the church inadvertently.
I mean, to be fair, I don't know what he expected, but whatever.
I mean, I guess he expected that in the 2000s, maybe people would not be fanatical and paranoid and stupid. But side note, Mike is Catholic, so
I mean, I think it's a ridiculous situation to be put in too, but really, what did he expect?
So yeah, those are the stories that I got from listeners or people what commented anyway about their personal experiences with the Satanic Panic. I didn't have any myself. Did you guys? Like Mike,
Not
I know your mom
especially.
was questionable about some things.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that just didn't uh, happen. Just because we weren't exposed to certain things and couldn't see certain types of movies, and she didn't want us watching certain types of TV shows. It wasn't like super duper strict. Um, she was, eventually okay with me playing Magic with my friends. There was a short period of time at the beginning where she would take the black cards that my friends gave me, and I didn't know what she did with them, but like later when I was in college, she said she was cleaning up around the house and found a little stack of them inside of a jar, like a decorative jar somewhere, and she gave them to me. I was like, oh wow, and they were all horrible because it was just whatever junk my friends gave me for free at the time. But but she didn't throw them away. She just hid them somewhere and forgot about them.
Nice. So how about the rest of you? Did you guys have any sort of nope, you can't do this, it's the devil?
Not
No.
especially. Go ahead, Dirk.
For me, my parents were that church was never really pushed on us, and so we kind of did what we wanted in all of it. None of my friends played D&D. We like Cub Scouts was like the only like weird thing other than like band and thing that was different from what I normally did at the house. I just did like what normal kid stuff did. It really wasn't until I kind of got to college, and got to be around people that were
Giant
I
dorks.
had an interest in hobbies of that sort.
Oh.
Like I can't say like I read Star Wars, I read BattleTech stuff, but reading a book is different than playing cards. There was a point where I bought a set of Magic cards and I looked at it, but no one I knew played it, so that I didn't get anything there. I never played D&D until I got to college, and I played a couple of games of it, and I had heard all the stuff like, oh, D&D this and this, but it was like I have no idea what this is. And then when people were like, oh yeah, it's just this is what D&D is, it's like I don't see how this is anything of the sort. So my exposure came in college, and that's where I actually kind of got into the hobbies that I have now, outside of, again, playing like video games was the only thing I had back in high school and when I was younger. And I don't think Zelda and Mario would have been considered satanic.
I don't know. Ganon is a giant pig?
Same.
Sure, there's pigs are like goats. They're both barnyard animals.
Yeah, my mom would at least put some thought into things. She would screen stuff. Like she was fine with me reading a bunch of, science fiction and fantasy, but there were certain things that she would scout ahead and would decide, this isn't appropriate. And so she wouldn't want me to read. Like for some reason there was, I don't know, I don't remember what it was. I don't know if she ever explained it to me, but there was some kind of problem she had with A Wrinkle in Time being assigned to a reading group when I was in like 4th or 5th grade. So I ended up not reading it, and I ended up reading something else. But yeah, she did at least put some thought into it.
Probably because
Deciding, okay,
the
this
three ladies
specific
were
thing,
witches, maybe?
I don't know, possibly.
Sort of? Kind of?
Maybe.
Have you ever read Wrinkle in Time? It's really good.
No, I never got around to it.
Oh, dude, you want to borrow
It's
mine?
it's great.
It's also
Like,
really
I
short.
could
It won't
see
take
it-
you long.
I could see a fundamentalist having an issue with the Golden Compass,
Oh, well, yeah.
but yeah,
Spoilers,
but,
the whole point of the gold, the what's that called? What's the name of that? His Dark Materials is to kill God. So, yeah. Not exactly, but in broad strokes.
no, in broad strokes, yeah.
That's how Squanto put it to me to talk me into reading it.
So,
Also, Jars in the chat actually just a minute ago said my elementary school had a bonfire as well, burned Magic and X-Men and rock albums. That's gross. Like and Jars, I know lives in the Philippines now. I assume Jars grew up in the Philippines, so it's not just here in the States. He said over under of Black Lotus's burned in bonfires. Ugh. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. Okay, Brian, keep going. Sorry. I wanted to get that in before I forgot.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say, so my parents have historically been conservative, but less like gay people are evil conservative and more of just like Reaganomics conservative, I guess. I don't know. I'm not trying to defend them or anything. But just as far as my own upbringing, my parents were against us watching The Simpsons because we had heard
same.
that. Yeah, we had heard that, Bart, addresses his father by his father's, real name, and
it's disrespectful.
that's disrespectful. That's less about like, oh, it's evil, and more of just we don't think that's appropriate sort of thing. And then I remember we turned on the TV and Simpsons was on, and my dad was like, "This is hilarious. We're gonna watch this from now on." So you guys have met my dad. That's my dad. So
clearly that was within the first like 7 seasons.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think, but I never felt like I was super constrained. We went to church, and when you're a kid, you don't make those decisions necessarily. I wasn't told, okay, Brian, do you want to go to church or do you want to stay home and eat pancakes? I don't know. I wasn't given that sort of decision. But I never felt like I was kept from anything. I wasn't allowed to watch like R-rated movies or stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but not because of Satan.
But not because of Satan.
Yeah.
No.
Like, I asked my mom about this, and Mom goes, I guess I was a bad parent. I was like, what? Why? She said, because
look at it.
Yeah, well, she's like, I just didn't think about that sort of thing. Like, I mean, I bought you Mortal Kombat. I was like, on the Genesis, the one that it could have blood. She's like, oh, I'm so bad. She's like, yeah, clearly I was a bad parent. I just didn't care at all. It's like we just let you watch whatever. We bought you whatever video games without checking them first. And then there was a pause, and she's like, I mean, you didn't grow up to kill anybody, which is the video game thing. We'll get into that in a few minutes. And I was like, not that you know of. And she went, see? And I don't want to know.
Yeah. I don't think I would have been allowed to have bought Mortal Kombat just thinking about my parents, but
like it came out in 93 on home consoles, so I was. Wait, when was Mortal Monday? Mortal Monday 1993 was in September. So I was almost 13.
Yeah, there you go.
So I guess she figured, like he's already seen these games in the arcade. So, what difference is it going to make?
Yeah, he's already ruined by now.
Yeah, it's too late. He's already gone. But yeah, like much like Brian these days with Sam, like if it had like sexual things in it, that was a no. But if it had violence in it, that was fine, as long as it wasn't like super gory, go for it. And I didn't even like the super gory stuff, so that didn't even bother me. Like that scene in RoboCop, the one I'm talking about. No, still don't like that. And that other scene in RoboCop with the guy whose skin is melting off. Nope. Not for me, thanks. So.
But what about?
It's been a while since I've seen RoboCop.
I was horrified by the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. That was the worst. Oh man.
Oh, was that what Dirk said? I was about to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. Wait, with the Nazis? No, that didn't. I don't think I saw that when I was real little.
Face melts off, and then the dude's head explodes.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that one when I was like super young.
No.
I do remember that Balaram taking the dude's heart out in Temple of Doom scared the crap out of me.
That was frightening.
Yes, I was gonna say. So, sorry. I was gonna say that Raiders of the Lost Ark saw that, and it didn't bother me. It didn't. I get where you guys are coming from. Didn't bother me.
It's probably because they were Nazis, and that's what Nazis deserve.
Yeah,
I don't know that I was old enough to make that connection.
What was that, Dirk?
But
there had been built up that these guys are not good.
Yeah.
And so you were like, oh well, if something bad happens to them, I don't care. But there really was no character development for Molaram.
Right. But, however, the first time I ever saw Temple of Doom was at a friend's sleepover, and that messed me up for a little bit. So, right there with you.
Yeah.
On the whole heart thing, did not care for that.
We're getting off topic from Satan, but
sorry.
Just an example of things that our parents may or may not have actually cared about. But when it came to like demons and stuff, like Mom didn't have any sort of whatever. Like she's like, I'm sure the devil's gonna jump out of his video game and eat his face, whatever. She's just like, please try not to kill your friends. All right.
If I have to.
So, now the Satanic Panic did have an effect. Like D&D's freaking sales skyrocketed, which they found hilarious at the time. But like, who was it? One of those letter departments was even considering looking into D&D before I guess they decided that would be silly. Is it the SEC? Is that right?
Really?
No, not the SEC. What? That's Securities Exchange. That's a different video that I watched.
Yeah. Let me be.
Yeah, the Let Me Be.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one, but something that had to do with like either regulation or crime, which those are the only two things that the governmental things do. ATF. No, I don't think it was that one. But they considered looking into D&D and then decided against it, I think, from what I remember from my research. I didn't write that down.
I think the FBI would be closer to it because the ATF wouldn't have any business looking into that.
I don't think it was the FBI. Like, I don't think it was one of the crime ones, although it could have been. I could be misremembering. It might have been one of the business ones to see if they're safe to be selling to children or something. I don't remember now. I apologize.
FTC?
That could have been it. That could have been it. But anyway, and then as we all know, because we've been around forever.
Did the CPSC exist at that point?
The who?
The CPSC Computer Consumer Product Safety
I
something.
I have no idea. That doesn't sound familiar, so I don't
Consumer
think
Product
that was
Safety
it.
Commission. That's what it is.
But anyway, so we started off as a podcast for the vast majority of our time about Magic, and everyone who's played Magic back then remembers that Unholy Strength, up to Revised, had a dude on it with a pentagram behind him, and then Unholy
Because it was
Strength,
unholy strength.
yeah, and then Unholy Strength in fourth edition had a dude on it. And the pentagram had been removed. And there were a few like cards that said demonic, all just sort of vanished. Like they weren't reprinted. Cards that were demons
Yep.
eventually all stopped being reprinted. And this lasted for years. Like Grinning Demon was the grand return of demons to Magic in Onslaught?
In Onslaught, yeah. Right when I was getting started, it was like, hey, look, a demon. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Onslaught released in 2002. Fourth edition MTG release date.
1995.
It was 95. So there were, what, 7, 8 years there where we just didn't get demons. Instead, we got horrors or nightmares or whatever else.
Yeah, Mirage Block used some Jinn and a Freet to represent what would be demons elsewhere.
Yeah.
Well, and let's not forget the infamous what's the mouse with the mug?
Oh, the Infernal Spawn of Evil, which Jars
The
brought up in
Infernal
chat.
Spawn of Evil. Yeah. Being an actual mockery of the fact of wizards being like, well, we can't do demons anymore. So didn't it have like demon crossed out?
Yeah, and replaced
and it was given the horror
beast.
Yeah. Not even horror, just beast.
I'd forgotten about that.
I think so.
That's hilarious. So
I mean, I totally buy that. So
yeah, when we say that it happened, like the Satanic Panic happened, in the late 70s to the mid 80s. It's not like it just suddenly stopped, because D&D had been tainted by that point in the public consciousness, and Magic was essentially the same thing to people that don't know the difference. Like, it's more that tabletop stuff, and look, it's got unholy and demons. Oh my god.
Yeah, there was still that undercurrent of panicky responses and reactions to things, because D&D was still out there. People still didn't like rock music. People still didn't like drugs. People still didn't like this, that, and the other thing.
Communists.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Chad also pointed out the Infernal Spawn of Evil was a creature beast child, but beast was crossed out and demon was written under it.
Yes.
Right. To be like, hey, look, we can do this again.
So, yeah. And then, well, okay, backing up to the 80s again, the whole metal music somehow got... Well, I know how the somehow, as it always is it's something that the Republicans don't like, because
or just older people don't like. I mean, the new thing that the kids are into that doesn't conform to what older people understand to be the standard is just always seem as troublesome. Jazz was the devil's music back in the 20s and 30s, and now it's
it was
stuff.
And now nobody listens to jazz except for Mike.
Yeah, I don't think it's boring old people stuff. I like it. But...
Oh my god, I saw a vinyl printing of the Cowboy Bebop soundtrack at Lost Ark, and I almost bought it despite not having a record player.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a tale as old as time. Is every generation forever thinks the next one is going to break the world, and not like in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and there were a couple of acts that weren't helping because they leaned into it just for laughs and shock value.
Alice
Acts like
Cooper, Ozzy Osbourne.
well, yeah. Alice Cooper did it for laughs. Ozzy Osbourne did it for laughs. Venom were a bit more. Venom and Slayer did it for the shock value. Motley Crue was a little bit of both.
I've never even heard of Venom, so I guess they weren't that bad.
They're like a thrash act that kind of inspired black metal. That were one of the inspirations for it.
But like, if you just think of what the average American, like my old man back in the day, was like, isn't that the idiot that bit the head off of a bat?
Yes.
I was like, yeah. He's like, okay. I was like, his music's good though. He's like, oh, okay, cool. Like,
yeah, like the original inspiration for Black Sabbath was the guys basically saying, what if we basically wrote music like horror movies? People like horror movies. What if we wrote music like that? And went from there.
And it worked.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then okay, hang on, content warning. Okay, apologies. The case that really sort of screwed the general perception of metal music was, again, a person committing suicide, and somehow Judas Priest music got blamed. Like, this went to court.
Yeah, that was one of those backmasking things. It was Better by Me, Better Than You. I can't remember the name of the song right now. But yeah, it was, the allegation was that there was a backmasked message saying, do it.
Yeah.
And that
backmasking means if you play it backwards, there's hidden meaning. There's hidden messages.
Right.
Yeah.
And
somehow they got caught up in all this. But and if you know anything, Judas Priest material is some of the most positive, life affirming, woo party time stuff you can get. So if they backmasked a message saying do it, at worst it'd be like
cocaine,
a line of coke.
Yeah.
But at worst.
But yeah, what backmasking is, just like, and this is probably gonna piss some people off, but just like people who see like faces in smoke or see Jesus on a piece of toast, it's just what's known as pareidolia. Like, your brain is wired to recognize patterns, and so when you're listening to something backwards, it's the same with EVPs, the electronic voice phenomenon. There's nothing there. Ghosts are not speaking to you through your microphone. They're just not. I'm sorry. What you're hearing is a random bunch of nonsense that your brain is assembling into something recognizable. When you see a face in the smoke, there's no face there. Your brain is assembling it into two eyes and a mouth. When you hear things, when you're playing Judas Priest backwards, it's not really there. Your brain is just turning the noise into something recognizable.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was a situation where it was actually being played backwards. I think that was one of those things where it was someone, another panic thing, or just weird pseudoscience stuff of this theory that people could either intentionally or unintentionally put backward messages into their own speech, and so people were already primed to pick up on backward messages in speech somehow. So that's why backmasking worked subliminally, as the weird pseudoscientific theory goes.
See, it's all nonsense. And I distinctly remember seeing footage of Rob Halford in a courtroom playing a recording of it backwards, and there's a sound that your brain could interpret as do it. And Rob even goes, even if we did put that there on purpose, all it says is do it. Do what? And that has stuck, him like freaking out about that in courtroom has stuck with me forever. He's like, do what? Jump off a building, have a party, like what?
Do you remember the whole like, hey, if you freeze Aladdin at just the right part, there's, somebody
Naughty stuff.
naughty stuff. From Aladdin to the Little Mermaid
The Little Mermaid
to the
legitimately does have the priest pop a boner.
Does it really?
It
I had
does. I have
always
seen
wondered.
that with my own eyes. The thing in, okay, we can take off the content warning there, right? The thing in the
Unless
Lion
people are
King,
offended by, yeah.
where he plops down and like the dust flies out and it spells sex. There was something there. It's SFX for either special effects or sound effects. I forget who. It was just a little shout out to one of the teams. In Aladdin, there's audio where this isn't what it says, but if you've been primed to hear it, you'll hear, "Come on, good teenagers, take off your clothes." I've heard it myself, straight off of the VHS. That's not what it says, but if you're listening for that, that's what you'll hear.
Yeah. That's the sort of stuff I'm talking about, because people have been conditioned to go, hey, this is a thing that happens.
Yeah. The Little Mermaid thing though, that one's real. I think that was an animator that was not happy. Cuz I've seen that with my own eyes, like I said, straight off of the VHS. There could be another explanation for it, but that's sure what it looks like. And it's only there for like a split second. Like you have to be looking right there as the camera move or the camera switches to something else. But yeah. So music. Chat brought up Harry Potter. Wait, where was that? There we go. My little cousins weren't allowed to watch Harry Potter because it was evil. Yeah, because it's got witchcraft and magic, which is something Satan does. And it turns out that the author of the Harry Potter books is in fact evil, but not because of Satan. It's because she's a bigot. So but yeah, there's always something like, and Brian said every generation thinks the next generation can't do it and is going to screw it up. It turns out that whatever generation came before the boomers were right, but but like nobody is down with what the kids are doing. My parents thought that the stuff I found hilarious was stupid. I think mom, was it mom? One of them, no, it was dad. The old man didn't like anything when I was a kid, but like he thought Animaniacs was just the dumbest crap he'd ever seen. He's like, this isn't funny. I'm like, this is hilarious. So, and I'm sure like the stuff the kids watch now, if I were to watch it, I'd be like, what is this crap? Because I'm not a kid, and I'm not a kid in this day and age. Like, I'm closer to a kid than most of the people I know my age. And I don't know if that's a thing to be proud of or not. But like, you're not supposed to like understand the stuff your kid likes. You're just not. And if you do, that's a little weird. You should probably let your kid watch some different stuff, Brian. Because I'm sure I could hear Brian sitting there going, Sam doesn't watch anything weird. But like, I forgot where I was going with that. But like everybody thinks that what their kids like is dumb. The old man's mom thought the stuff he liked when he was a kid was dumb. He thought the stuff I liked when I was a kid was dumb. I'm sure if I had a kid, I would think the stuff they watch is dumb. Like Paw Patrol, Jesus Christ. So like a lot of kids watched PewDiePie. PewDiePie's an idiot.
Oh god, it's so dumb.
See? So, that's just the way things go. But the problem is when people in power can point at something that they don't like or that they don't understand or that directly threatens them. Like rock music was against the status quo. That was the point. Rock
Yeah,
music
that's
was
the
about
whole thing.
yeah, rock music was about taking back the power. And so of course the people in power are like this is bad. And so they pointed at it and was like that's the devil. And the people who are more subject to blind panic than others believed them, and that led to all of these things, like Judas Priest being on trial. So, and then there was the oh god, was it Tipper Gore? Was she the one who did the music thing?
Yeah, the PMRC,
The what?
the Parents Music Resource Council Center or something.
Oh.
PMRC.
I will take your word for that. I just remember it was Tipper Gore who was the reason that some parents didn't let their kids listen to some music. But wait, was that the hip hop was bad, or was that later?
Was that the what was bad?
Hip hop.
No, that was something that was when you had people like John Denver and Frank Zappa and Dee Snider in front of Congress talking about.
Right, okay, because everybody who has ever been into any kind of metal has seen the clip of Dee Snider looking like Dee Snider in front of Congress giving an eloquent speech. It is beautiful. Yeah, and then hip-hop got turned on because, that's the blacks rising up, so we gotta slap them down. Not my words. I was listening to gangster rap back then because I was a suburban white boy. Is Dirk asleep? Is that what I just heard?
I don't know.
I think so.
That's pretty
Dirk. Dirk.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, buddy, are you ready for bed?
I'm getting there.
You may have just been snoring.
Yeah, we it could have been that we just heard you snore. Oh, so let's move on then, so we can get Dirk back in on the conversation. So, Dirk, did you listen to the devil music?
No, I was an oldies and person and country music person. It wasn't until like middle high school that I got into like classic rock.
Wow. All right, let's
mean,
not...
like when I say yeah, like no old. I mean like the Eagles and like the more recent stuff like AC/DC and stuff like that.
So let's not talk to Dirk about devil music then, because Dirk will be like, "What?"
No, I had no idea any of that stuff.
So what else? So video games after I don't know. Do I need a content warning for the video game thing? We'll throw it up there just in case, because I know mass shootings happen all the time these days, and that's ridiculous, but we'll throw one up there. But yeah, video games became the scapegoat after the Columbine massacre again because they played video games. That was the connection.
Yep.
Like, imagine that a teenager in the 90s played video games.
Mm-hmm.
But then they played Doom, and Doom is where you go to hell and you shoot. Well, you're shooting the demons. You're not on the demon's side, but we'll ignore that part because it's got demons in it and it's got shooting in it. So clearly it's evil, and that's why these two shot up their school. And I think it was the first mass school shooting of its kind. It's the first one that got major headlines.
Columbine, I think, was the first one to really get national attention. Yes.
Yeah, 'cause I feel like there was another one when we were younger.
Well, that's what I say of its kind. Like
Uh,
it was definitely the first one like that.
yes.
So, yeah, but video games came under scrutiny, things like Doom. But even like when was that?
99.
Wow, really?
Yep.
It
I've been our
was.
senior
Wow.
year.
Okay, so even before that, video games were under fire. Okay, let me take the content warning off. There we go. Even before that, video games were under fire because again, Mortal Kombat had like you could take off his head, you could pull out his still beating heart. So Satan. And you'd think once Saturday Night Live had a character that made fun of this, that it would have evaporated. But no. One of Dana Carvey's most beloved characters was the church lady, who always thought that maybe it could be, I don't know, Satan? Like, and then the crowd would laugh, and the church lady would turn and look at the camera and say, Satan? And it would zoom in on her face, and everyone would laugh, and it was very funny. And looking back, I don't know why that's funny. But it sure was at the time. But you'd think at that point, oh, okay, it's played out. Saturday Night Live has a recurring bit making fun of it, so it's probably nothing. No, it still was a thing.
Well, yeah, we still have this epidemic in our schools, so it's just the lefties making fun of it. But
So, yeah, essentially anything different that you can froth people up. Nowadays, it's critical race theory, which isn't a thing until you get to like college or law school. But critical race theory has been perverted to mean teaching
Anti-American.
teaching American history that is
Anything I don't
accurate.
like.
Yeah. And yeah, we can't bring up moral outrage and won't someone think of the children without bringing it all the way up to the modern day with trans panic. Like everyone on the right, it seems, is terrified that a trans person is gonna go into the bathroom and, I don't know, look at them or something. I don't know. Like, and the gay people, the current panic is that gay people are all pedophiles? And the evidence for this is, it's the same as all of the other evidence that we've talked about. It's nothing. There's literally nothing.
yeah,
And
Yeah. The statistics tell the opposite.
yeah, literally everything other than what Tucker Carlson says the opposite. But like, I will tell you right now, I am a cisgender straight white man, and I'm going to tell you right now authoritatively what the gay agenda is and the trans agenda. I'm giving it all away. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Spill it.
Because as a cis white straight man, clearly I am the authority on this. But I've been told by many, some of my best friends are gay. Actually, that's true. But their whole agenda is they just want to be able to live their lives. That's it.
How dare they?
That's literally their whole thing. So
They should totally feel ashamed the way that they've been made to feel ashamed for forever. Don't they get that yet? Come on.
right?
Get in your hole.
But the whole thing is that, at least with the current state of things, the Republicans in power, empowered by the years where Trump was president, have gone full mask off. Like, freaking Trump is having dinner with known white supremacists and no one seems to be batting an eye, who should be. So they don't do dog whistles really anymore. They don't say,
You're saying the quiet part out loud.
yeah, they don't try to make up coded language. They just say, "Oh, nope, trans people are bad." Like that's what they do. And it's all about fear, harnessing the fear and pointing it at their base and frothing them up so that they will go and vote for them because they are the only ones who can stand between you and the fear. Like I won't let if you elect me, I won't let those icky trans people get you. And that's all it's ever been about. Like the D&D thing is just the kids doing something that is empowering and spooky. And magic is the same thing. And the metal music is about taking back the power from the stodgy old adults. And McCarthyism was fear of communist spies hidden amongst you. It's a small step from their communist spies hiding amongst you to 30 years later, there are satanic cults hiding amongst you. To 30 years later, there are gays and transes hiding amongst you. And they all want your children. Like...
rumors.
Yeah, and that's all that it's never about what's true or what's real or what's good for anybody. Like they don't care about the children. They say what about the children and then they like take money away from education. They don't care about the children. They just want you to be mad so you don't notice how they're screwing you. And like this sounds like lefty political nonsense, but it's not. That's if the left was doing this, I'd be doing the same thing. They do. They just haven't had a chance lately because the right does it so much better these days. So I'm sure I'll get, some lefty pinko soy boy cuck or whatever other idiot words that they use because they can't form real sentences. But that's all it is. It's fear and trying to control you and aim you in a direction that is beneficial to them. That's all of these. It's the Satanic Panic, all of the moral outrage. That's all any of this has been about. That's all it ever will be about. And yet we don't learn. Jazz is the devil's music because who made jazz? Black people. And that was bad in the 20s. Hip-hop is bad for you because who made hip-hop? The black people in the 90s. Like...
That was the big thing about Elvis Presley.
Yeah, Elvis was shaking his hips, and that was going to drive women to have premarital sex. And if people who have sex are happy and don't get all mad about stuff as often. So we can't have that because then we can't control them. I am proud of me for waiting until the end to get all political, but like it.
I am also impressed.
There's
some of those people, some of those haters are, true believers, but that's because they're also being fooled by the people telling them this stuff.
Yeah.
And what has been the common thread through all of this?
Fear.
Straight up.
The devil is coming for your children. The cults are coming for your children. The communists are going to take over America. The gays are destroying the American family. Even though the gays are an American family? So...
I mean, my wife turned to me like a day or two ago. Maybe a little more than that, but it was definitely, within a week. And she's like, why are they still having to litigate gay marriage? Wasn't there the court decision? I said, yes, there was the court decision. And she's like, does anybody care about it? I'm like, I didn't think so. I thought we were all good. I thought we, had settled this. But
Nope. Because that ruling didn't actually. It's sort of like Roe v. Wade. Like, it didn't enshrine anything in law, right? It was just a precedent.
uh, I'm not sure what you mean.
I don't
Precedent
know how
is
to.
supposed to enshrine something in law. So
I don't know.
I-
Well, like,
The
Roe v.
Supreme
Wade
Court
didn't actually.
decision doesn't enshrine stuff in law. It just says the interpretation of this law or everything says this is what the interpretation says, and this is what we're ruling in favor of.
and that makes it law.
Well,
Like,
no,
full stop.
because then someone could come along and overturn
But
Roe.
it's not a statute. But it's not a statute.
Yeah, it's not a statute. Like, someone
It is
could
not a statute
come along
passed
and
by a
overturn Roe v. Wade, and then now it's in danger again. So, I think I don't remember I don't know how to pronounce this. Obergefell, is that how you say it?
Yes.
But yeah, that ruling didn't. That could get overturned too, unless there are laws in the books. Is my point. Like, Roe v. Wade was overturned, so now,
Well, but
abortion
the
isn't
law
safe.
can also, a legislative law can also be overturned. In 1996, then President Bill Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act, which defined marriage as between a man and a woman. A Democratic president, by the way. So trying to cater to,
Conservatives.
other
Yeah,
people.
trying to reach
And
across
and
the
it
aisle.
is, and now it has been stricken. So a Supreme Court decision is law until they decide it's not, and I get that can be frustrating, but a Supreme Court decision does not have any less weight than a legislative statute.
Except it only takes them
Except
to go.
when they
Nah.
decide that it's not.
Yeah,
But they get.
like, that's my
It's-
point. There were no statutes about abortion because Roe v. Wade was a thing, and now it's not anymore, and now that's a problem. And the gay
and now
marriage
they're-
thing
and
is the
now
same
Now
thing.
it's a free for all among the states.
And now
Yeah.
and now we're playing catch up. Yes. So
But
we had 50 years to get it done, and everybody just said because it was a controversial subject. They're like, okay, good, these 9 people did it for us. We don't have to worry about it anymore. And keep in mind, there were, and I'm not trying to turn this all into this one thing, but there were other decisions like Casey that modified Roe. So Casey v. Planned Parenthood,
Yeah.
authored, I think, by what was her name?
all right, you don't have to whip out your law dick onto the table.
O'Connor.
We got you.
Yeah. But yeah. So fear of the other. Even going back past the 50s with the whole idea of the Satanic Panic has been used before. This person isn't like you. The world, the next generation's going to ruin everything, and Satan's got a hand in it. So.
Yeah.
Well, even the modern day version is the QAnon movement, because what is
Oh,
their
right.
thing?
Pizzagate. I was the whole time Chewie was talking about D&D and unsubstantiated things getting blown out of proportion. I kept thinking, yeah, like a pedophile ring being run out of a pizza restaurant, right? Yeah.
Satan worshipping pedophiles that, are behind all the decisions, and your voice doesn't count, and blah blah blah, and all that. Yep.
They're using their
Talking about
Jewish
a panic.
space lasers to keep us in line. Yeah.
Oh yeah, when Mike
Yeah.
said that some of them are true believers, I was gonna say I fully believe that Marjorie Taylor Greene believes all of this nonsense. I think she's one who is convinced that this is all true. But like, Mitch McConnell doesn't believe it.
No.
Kevin
No.
McCarthy doesn't believe it. Donald Trump doesn't believe in anything. So
He believes his own hype.
Okay, except for that, yeah. So
until he doesn't want to anymore. But
so
yeah,
like I fully believe that she does believe all these ridiculous things she says. So, but again, it's all controlled. You like, yeah, the whole QAnon movement is the modern day Satanic Panic. Like
yeah,
the
that was
the Democrats and the liberals and the leftists and the groomers and the pedophiles and the gays and the transes, and they're all coming for your children. Like
yeah.
none of that is true. Like it's just not. Sorry, not sorry.
I mean, shouldn't we be happy that that's not the state of the world? But
Yeah,
it doesn't give them something to rally around.
but like, and much like in the final season, I keep saying final, the most recent season of Stranger Things, where someone was killed, and the weird kid who leaned into the whole "yeah, I'm evil, yeah" thing, who played D&D, got blamed, and one person was like, "I'm gonna find him and I'm gonna kill him." That that's happening. Just like, how long ago was the Club Q shooting? Like, it's, if you get people scared enough and you repeat things over and over and over and over that they should be afraid because this is bad and it's coming for your children, eventually people are gonna decide to do something about it, and that's when people get hurt. Like Fox News says every night that the gays are bad and they're grooming children, and they say it over and over and over, and then someone goes, "Oh no, the gays are bad and they're coming for my children," so they go and they shoot some gays, and then Fox News goes, "Well, how dare you say that we did that? Why are you trying to politicize a tragedy?" Because we're going, "Hey, you drove them to this." Like it, and
There
it's
was
all the same thing.
there was a scene, and it was actually really well done in not the latest season of The Boys, but the previous season, I think season two, where The Boys is a fictional universe where superheroes are real, but most of them are jerks. You know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Um, and in this particular setting at this particular time, there is a superhero that has a lot of TV coverage, and they are advocating basically to Americans to watch out because some other countries, some bad people have started to also see superheroes, but they're super villains. They have powers and they're going to come for you and whatever. And this scene shows just appears to be an average white guy just watching the TV, and it shows his like daily routine. He seems like a super nice guy, but every day over the course of days, weeks, it's not really known. The TV's always on in the background, and you always hear this hero, quote unquote, saying like, we need to look out for each other, be on the lookout for suspicious activity. And at one point, he goes into the same convenience store he always goes into, and he talks to the same cashier he always talks to, and there's some light or something in the background, a car going by or whatever, that makes the guy's eyes flash up for a second, and the guy does a double take. It makes the cashier's eyes light up. The guy buying the food does a double take, and there's no words. There's no like, gee, I thought he was a supervillain or whatever. He just you see the connection in his mind, and the next day he takes a gun and he goes there. He says, and he tells the guy like, "What are you?" And the guy's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he ends up killing the cashier, who was just an ordinary dude. And the next scene is the superhero being like, "That was terrible that he did that, and our thoughts and prayers are with his family. But in the end, wasn't he just trying to be a good citizen?" So yeah, that
Yeah,
same sort of
I
like,
haven't seen The Boys, but I've heard that its political commentary is dead on.
yeah, oh yeah, straight up. So Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. So I don't want to like throw shade on the people who get caught up in these moral outrages, because like the quickest way to get someone to think irrationally is to say your children are in danger. And especially if you're already leaning towards, bigotry against a certain people, whether that's consciously or not, if someone says, hey, this certain people is a danger to your kids, you're going to be like, And if you hear that enough, you're going to start to believe it, especially if you're in the right-wing news bubble.
Yeah. I mean, I don't ascribe to any of that stuff, but if I really thought someone that I knew, that I was aware of, was a threat to my child, I would do something not at all in my better interest, because if I legit thought that that person was a danger to my child, and you probably never see me again. So yeah, parenthood makes you crazy.
Yeah. So like, especially in the modern day when they're all being bombarded with, lies that come from a place of authority. And that's how it was with the Satanic Panic too. Like, churches were having sermons about how this was bad, and why would they lie? Like, it's Steve. Pastor Steve is a good guy.
Steve. Yeah, I like Steve.
He doesn't want to... He wouldn't lie to us about things, so this must be true. Like, even though it's not true, but Steve wasn't lying on purpose. It's just a thing that he also heard. And, oh no, that sounds bad. And it all came from a place of authority. So, like, I just wish that people could understand that they're being lied to and that this isn't true. Like I said, I explained the gay agenda and the trans agenda. They just want to live their lives. That's their whole agenda. They don't want your children. They don't even like your children. I don't like your children. Like, nobody likes your children. Nobody likes children. But again, when you hear it enough, it becomes a part of your brain, and you're like, oh, they're gay? Don't they touch kids? Oh, that's bad. We should not let them live here. And that's all it takes. Like, we should stop. I'm just making myself mad, and Dirk is going to fall asleep again.
I think we've made our point.
Yeah, so I also highly recommend the most recent episode of Some More News, which came out yesterday, which is all about moral panics. Like I said earlier, moral panics and how to spot them, from November 30th on their YouTube channel. It's a good watch because he does a much better job explaining where moral panics come from and what their purpose is. I've explained it to you, but it's just me ranting. So I highly recommend that if this is of interest to you, to give it a look, because it is an hour long, because all of their episodes are long, but it's really good because Cody Johnston is your news dude. And here's some news. Someone else has heard of this, right? It's not just me. Mike, was it you that had heard of Some More News?
Yeah, someone else I know on Facebook would post links to it sometimes.
Oh, okay. Maybe, I think it was Clues. I knew someone else actually watched it, Some More News, but I can't remember who. It might have been Clues. Anyway, it was Bill. I remember now. I'm pulling the conversation up. Anyway. So, what was that? I think we should stop. That was Kovo cheering 666 bits. Thank you very much. Wait, no, it was 600 bits and then 6 bits. Because the 666 didn't work for some reason. I wonder why. That's weird. Oh well. But anyway, since it's so late, should we just not bother with final thoughts?
It's pretty late.
Yeah, just wrap it up. So okay, let me do the Patreon thing real quick, because hey, I don't know if you're aware, but this show is brought to you by patrons like you. Hang on. Build for November. Da, da, da. There we go. So let me thank, in whatever order this is, our lifeguards who, this whole episode was final thoughts. That's a good point. Let me just thank our mythic lifeguards who get the sponsorship shout out every week. Thank you to Al, Kim Ho, Scuzzo, John Parker, Jake Jansen, Beardy Man, Team You Hillis Are You, Violet Moon, The Beast Father Aaron Goodwine, Jason Kaus, Andrew Hunt, Cody Buckowing, Casey, Pinball Witch, Jason Doan, Mr. Dr. Lewis, Connor Kennedy, ALK Alters, and Andrew Odie. And thank you as always to everyone watching or listening, everyone watching or listening later, and to, just everyone in general. We appreciate it. I hope this was, I don't want to say enjoyable, but informative, I guess. And
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so people kept asking, you doing something special for episode 666? Yes, we are bumming people out and then getting super political. So,
At the same time.
at the same time. I mean, that goes hand in hand these days, unfortunately. So, from all of us dorks, right, we good? Anything else?
Yes.
Was that yes for any, we good, or yes for anything else?
Yes, we're good.
Okay.
While Dirk is still conscious.
Probably. So from all of us dorks, please, when someone tells you to fear something, think about it. Think about why they want you to fear something, like, and then see if there's any reason to fear something. Like, if Pastor Steve is coming at you with a knife, okay, be afraid of Pastor Steve. But if Pastor Steve might be gay, it's probably fine. Like, there's, calm down. That's not a thing. So, with that, go play D&D. Play your unholy strengths with the pentagram. Thank you all so very much for listening, and hail Satan. How else could we end this show, right?
I mean, yeah.